This is Top Accurate Global News Update. I am Abiodun Mohammed. More than 10 million Ukrainians are without electricity after dozens of Russian air attacks on the country's energy infrastructure as winter sets in and temperatures plummet. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said repeated barrages disrupted electricity and water supplies across Ukraine, but Russia blamed the civilian suffering on Ukraine's refusal to negotiate an end to the war that began on February 24th. On Thursday, residents of the recently recaptured city of Kherson in southern Ukraine rushed to stockpile food, blankets, and winter clothing, with shouting matches and shoving erupting as volunteers tossed supplies to the crowds that waited hours in freezing rain. Several Ukrainian cities were attacked as the latest assault coincided with the season's first snow, and officials in Kiev warned of difficult days ahead. Ukrainian energy company Ukrenergo said the cold snap had brought increased demand in regions where electricity was recently brought back, and government energy advisor told media 50% of Ukrainians were experiencing disruptions. In the southern Odessa region, a Russian raid hit infrastructure, and the governor warned residents of the threat of a massive missile attack, urging them to seek shelter. North Korea fired a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile (Icbm) on Friday that Japanese officials said had sufficient range to reach the mainland of the United States and that landed just 200 kilometers off Japan. The launch, reported by both South Korean and Japanese officials, comes a day after a smaller missile launch by the North and its warning of fiercer military responses to the US boosting its regional security presence. US Vice President Kamala Harris will meet leaders of Japan, South Korea, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit on Friday to discuss the launch, a White House official said. Harris is in Thailand for the APEC summit amid heightened geopolitical tensions over the war in Ukraine and other flashpoints such as Taiwan and the Korean Peninsula. Friday's launch adds to a record-breaking year for North Korea's missile program after it resumed testing ICBMs for the first time since 2017 and broke its self-imposed moratorium on long-range launches as denuclearization talks stalled. Officials from several West African coastal states have been meeting in the Ghanaian capital Accra to discuss how to tackle the spillover of Islamist violence from the Sahel region. Ghana's National Security Minister Albert Kandapa said collaboration was needed because what he described as terrorist activity was crossing borders. The meeting comes as several countries have decided to pull out of an international peacekeeping mission in Mali, where a jihadist insurgency began a decade ago. Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Ivory Coast are increasingly at risk of being attacked by Islamist militants pushing southwards from Sahel countries. The Biden administration ruled on Thursday that Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has immunity from a lawsuit over the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, drawing immediate condemnation from the slain journalist's former fiancé. Khashoggi was killed and dismembered in October 2018 by Saudi agents in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, an operation which US intelligence believed was ordered by Prince Mohammed, who has been the kingdom's de facto ruler for several years. A spokesperson for the Saudi consulate in Washington could not be reached for comment on Thursday evening after business hours. In a document filed in US District Court for the District of Columbia, Justice Department attorneys wrote that the doctrine of head of state immunity is well established in customary international law. Japan's core consumer inflation accelerated to a 40-year high in October, driven by currency weakness and imported cost pressures that the central bank shrugs off as it sticks to a policy of ultra-low interest rates. The nationwide core consumer price index (CPI) was up 3.6% on a year earlier, exceeding the 3.5% rise expected by economists and a 3% gain seen in September. It was the largest jump since February 1982, when a Middle East crisis stemming from the Iran-Iraq war disrupted crude oil supply and triggered a spike in energy prices. The rise in the index, which excludes volatile fresh food prices but includes oil products, confirmed that inflation remained above the 2% goal of the Bank of Japan (BOJ) for a seventh consecutive month. But economists do not expect the BOJ to join a global trend of raising interest rates because it sees this year's acceleration in inflation as a cost push episode that will fade as import costs stop pushing. That is the size of top accurate global news update. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy weekend.